Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Great. Sandra has a problem joining.
Yeah, someone sent me the direct link, so that was easy. Oh. Ask to join video.
So Sandra is here, but we cannot see her.
Yeah, she is. I'm telling her it should be on top toolbar. Sandra, it should be like where it says fueling a net positive resolution.
Maysoon.
Hi, Maysoon.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
You changed the questions in the last minute, Glada.
Yes, you did. I know. I've got to cut out some of this.
I'm not reading.
This is
give
the
the
trick.
Just give the same answers.
Give the same answers. Okay. No,
I will do my best. I don't promise anything.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm very late.
Yeah, that's all right. Though I think we've got it. I'm focusing much more on finance now. Holistic.
Yeah, you can always do the old politician thing, Say, well, I think really what's important is this.
Exactly. No, I'll try. I've worked it out this morning, so it's fine. And then let's see.
So missing Sandra?
Yeah, Sandra still can't join.
Yeah, Sandra is here, but she can't get the video. I see. So everyone can hear us.
Yes. We'll be starting in a few minutes when all the panelists join, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, let's just give it a couple of minutes. Okay, so let's get going because Sandra will definitely find her way in. Hello, Dominica.
Everyone, sorry, we were just going a little bit over. There was such a fascinating conversation about embodied carbon in our previous session. So thank you for your patience. Welcome, everybody. I hope everyone has made it here to our next session. In this session, we will hear about the important role that net positive buildings will play in limiting our future carbon emissions. Please do add any questions that you have in the chat box, as there is a Q&A afterwards for this session, and Glada, our moderator, will bring in questions for the panelists. So for now, without any further ado, I'm just going to hand it right over to you, Glada. Glada Lahn is the Senior Research Fellow for Energy, Environment, and Resources at Chatham House. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for moderating this panel.
Thank you so much, Dominica. It's a real pleasure to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Sandra. I'm glad you could make it. So
that's a different.
So we're speaking today about fueling a net positive revolution. And we have with us a really vibrant panel of experts, and they're all working really at the heart of this revolution. Maysoon Al-Khurissat, founder of the Senior Sustainable Architecture Consultant at Adaa, a sustainable development consultancy based in Jordan. We have Raji Hattar, Chief Sustainability Officer at Aramex. Michelle M. Farrell, Senior Operations Officer at Edge Green Building Market Transformation Program at the Climate Business Department of IFC, and Sandra Draskovic, a General Manager at Kuwait Green Building Council. So Mohammed mentioned this morning in his speech that buildings and their construction processes contribute about 40% of global carbon emissions. So the question for some time for the construction industry and architects and urban planners has been, how can we retrofit and design those emissions out? And it's been, it's really clear from everything that's been said today that we need to move much faster than we are. And we know that buildings can now be made not only passive, but also as prosumers of energy, and especially through the use of renewable energy. And so we're asking today, what else might they be able to contribute positively to reductions in emissions, as well as other resource constraints that we're facing. So there's a particular interest here in the Middle East and African region in saving water, especially in light of the effects of climate change. We did some work a few years ago with Jordan Green Building Council on green affordable homes, and it showed how much people appreciated water-saving devices, rainwater storage, being added to their buildings. And there's also, in terms of large-scale constructions, there are other environmental impacts to consider beyond energy and water. At Chatham House, we're working on sand, for example, and that's the second most heavily traded commodity after water. It's essential for cement and glass, and yet not many people know about the huge human and environmental costs of its extraction. So I think the past year has also made many of us more aware of how important buildings are to mental health, and this is certainly clear from the unequal effects of the lockdowns and how inadequate housing is taking its toll on families and communities. So I hope we can bear that in mind too. So today we're going to focus on the cutting edge thinking, which re-envisions buildings as giving it back more than they take, and how we can realize that vision at scale. I just want to remind you, please write any questions in the chat as we go along, and hopefully we'll have time to answer them in the panel discussion. And if you are sharing on social media, please, add the World Green Building Council Twitter account at WorldGBC and the hashtag for the Congress, which I'll put in the chat. So, Maysoon, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a bit more about what net positive means from the perspectives of architects and designers? Is net positive a realistic responsibility for them at the moment? And, would love to hear about any examples of this approach in the region.
Thank you first, Glada, and I want to thank all the organizers and all the speakers at the previous sessions. It was really informative sessions. My answer would be net positive for architects. It's it means being producer instead of being a consumer. So once you design a building and start running that building, you have you're producing carbon. You have a carbon footprint. So how can you offset this carbon footprint, or how you can you mitigate this carbon from your design or from your building throughout the life cycle of this building? So as an architect, maybe my role would be at the beginning of the design or during the design stage, but I should have like a life cycle approach thinking when I am talking about net positive. Well, net positive, it started first when we were talking about energy. Like a few years ago, when we were talking about net zero, we were always mentioning energy. And that's the easiest part, actually, of net zero, or of being a producer instead of a consumer. Because the technology for energy, it's advancing really well, and we have plenty of resources for renewable energy production in our area or our region. So we don't have a problem with energy. Water is also, the technology is coming out to be more advanced now, so we can approach that target as well. Maybe the challenge will be in the material part. Because what I see in the material part, it's like we are lacking information from manufacturing, and we don't have APDs. You know, once you want to design a carbon positive or a net carbon building, you need to have how much these construction material are producing or using from carbon. But we are missing this information. So I think this is the biggest challenge. Well, is it a realistic responsibility for the architects now to start thinking or to work toward net positive? I think the architects and designers, they have a vital role in moving this forward, because they are playing multiple roles. First of all, they could be advisors for real estate developers, so they can advise in that direction. And the second, that they are the main player in the design team. And actually, this role, I think it should be re-estimated or re-evaluated, because we used to have like the architect as the main player, but he's more of a leader. He's not the only player. So we have to go to the integrative design process approach, when everyone is committed to participate in the design process from the beginning. That will make the design even more working toward the net positive approach that we are thinking, because we will have input from the contractor, we will have input from all the designers, we have input from even the manufacturing. And another thing that I would like to add in here, that we have to create a new type of design teams. We have new roles now that have to come into the design game. Not only the designers, the mechanical, electrical, and architects, but we also have new champions, new roles like the energy simulators or performance simulators. We have to have specialists who are, their job is only to take into consideration the sustainability aspects of the project. So this is this is a load that we have to take away from the architect. But the architect's role should be more focused on going back to the basics by understanding the climate and knowing how to use the bioclimatic strategies that will be the base or the first thing that an architect should do, and working with the other sustainability design teams with on one goal. I think they will reach, or they will starting to go toward a net positive building. So we have to change the way we are thinking. We have to change the way we are approaching design. We have to take also responsibility of educating the owners as well as the new generations. And you were asking about also if we have any evidences in the region. I think we are working toward it, but I don't think we reached a real net positive building now as a new project. Maybe we have some cases from existing buildings because they were able to measure the carbon emissions they have. But for a new design, I don't think we still have the full information to be able to design a net positive building. But we have new tools now that we can use. We have the rating systems, we have the advancement of software that we can use, but we are working toward that, but it's not yet happening now. But I see it in the future coming up.
Thanks, Maysoon. Certainly, it's a very, it's a very progressive way of thinking, and you're right. In terms of the data and information out there, how do you make those decisions on what to prioritize? I want to turn now to Raji, and you've had extensive experience in the private sector and in logistics. What do you think's in it for business to start taking this net positive approach? And what kind of challenges do you think companies face in doing that? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Glada, and thank you for the organizers and everybody who's attending as well. Actually, net zero, net positive, and all these net things for a private sector company is a rocket science. So let's take it in a very down to earth terminologies that whoever is not an expert would understand how to mitigate your carbon emissions, reduce them, and if needed, offset them. And at the end, you reach a point whereby your impact is positive on the environment. Why is it important for the private sector? There are maybe 5-6 reasons I can think of. First of all, we want to be good to the environment. So that's something, some companies feel that they are responsible to be environmentally friendly businesses, and thus they reduce their emissions and they try to reach a level of positive impact on the environment. Second thing are the SDGs and the Paris Agreement and the commitments of the government where we operate to these two areas, whereby you don't want to wake up one morning and the government you operate in tells you have to cut 20% in the coming 6 months. So you get shocked by a huge investment that you need to put there. Legislations as well are getting more advanced, and they are coming all over the world. And you can see now some countries are imposing on different types of equipment to be AAA, AAA+, and all that stuff. That's another area where private sector needs to be aware of and to make sure that they are not, falling in a trap of, being pushed to reduce their emissions by big investments. On the cost side and the cost prevention, first of all, carbon tax is coming, whether we like it or not, and it's been imposed now across the globe in some countries. And you will start seeing it even on the prices of products and materials you buy. So you don't want to end up, paying extra amount of money on your fuel consumption as a carbon tax. And I know, for example, South Africa already imposed carbon tax as part of the price of electricity and fuel. The second thing is that if I go renewable, for example, I'm cutting down my costs. My bottom line will be impacted positively. So if I go renewable energy, if I go electric vehicles and upgrade my fleet, I'm cutting down my carbon emissions and I'm benefiting my bottom line. A competitive advantage as well. Competitors are doing it, then you need to do it. Otherwise, clients will not come to you, especially responsible clients. And the last thing, which is extremely important for public shareholding companies and people who are looking for investors, and I'm sure Kayla will come into that later on, is that there are lots of investors nowadays who look at your ESG performance, environment, social, and governance performance as equal as they look at your financials, and sometimes they look even more into that, because ESG as a concept, it's a plus, but it can be a risk as well. So if you do not do 1, 2, 3, you might be fined, you might be closed down. So this is in a nutshell why private sector should be doing this. Challenges, there are different challenges in different regions. Technologies are not available, legislations are not helping. Licensing an electric van in the Middle East We started doing that. It's taking 6 months with some governments to be able to license an electric van to operate in the streets. So these are some of the challenges, private sector are facing in this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Raji. I mean, is there one example you might pick up on where you think that a company or a development is moving in this direction, even if they're not there yet?
Well, in the construction, I'm not too aware. I would just tell you about Aramex, and I managed to cut down my emissions in the past 8 years by around 46%, adopting different types of technologies, LEED certified buildings, energy efficiency processes. When I say 44% of, let's say, electricity consumption, that's a 44% lower cost on my bottom line. So, and I have two solar farms in Dubai. I produce 60% of my electricity in these warehouses coming from solar. In Jordan, I cover more than 85% of my consumption. So it's a very obvious high return on investment process. Forget the buzzwords and the big things, and we love environment. For private sector, at the end, it's good to be green and stuff, but again, your accountant would look at your bottom line and what are you doing.
Yeah, it's really great to hear that, Raji. Michelle, I'm thinking, I want to ask you about enabling this more holistic approach to buildings. Net positive is still a pretty radical concept by the sound of it. And is IFC thinking about it? Are there financing opportunities out there for Middle Eastern and African countries? And I wondered if you had any examples of initiatives from the region that you might share that might offer the opportunity for a net positive or regenerative solution.
Okay, of course, absolutely. So as a development organization, IFC, International Finance Corporation, we're part of the World Bank. So we work mainly solely in emerging markets. So what our goal is really to democratize green building and make it achievable for almost all of the world in these emerging markets. And we focus on the key items that can reduce greenhouse gases the quickest in the most holistic way and also in the most monetarily efficient way as well. So particularly in one of the rating systems that we have developed, which is called EDGE, we focus on holistic design elements first. So for example, reduced window to wall ratio, highly reflective surfaces, better lighting, insulation, natural ventilation, ceiling fans, which as mentioned before, could be hard to get us past code. But all of these items can lower the consumption. And by doing these holistic items first, we're able to take some of the percentage down enough that I think that in emerging markets, we have seen now 2 that have gone zero carbon. And we have also allowed in our system that you can buy carbon offsets and you can also purchase green and renewable energy. So this allows people to go there much quicker if we're going to meet those 2030, all the goals that we're trying to go for, 2030, 2050 goals. A great example of this, or let me, before I go into the example, I'll say how we do this as a financial institution. So financial incentives are available for many different ways. It could be country financial incentive. It could be increased square meters, for example, or square feet. And this is for both new and for retrofit. So as IFC, we take a 4-pronged approach at the way that we approach this market. So the first is investment and advisory. So to both banks, because we work with banks to encourage them to lend to green mortgages, for example, because that would be very beneficial. For example, we've had 15,000 units built in a case like this in South Africa. We also, if the project is big enough, we can also incentivize directly to the building sector. The other prong of this approach is we work with the governments to offer them codes and incentives and to create a quantifiable certification system. we are also right now running a program that is DFGE, which is designed for greater efficiency. So we're trying to educate more of the emerging markets as well to be able to have access to this, which Maysoon mentioned before. It's just maybe some of the base knowledge isn't there at the beginning of the design. And if you're going to be able to afford to go net positive energy in these markets, then we're going to need to really, really think about this hard. And what you also can get from this with a quantifiable and third-party certified system. So this could be, I mean, I talk about our system, but we support all systems that are third-party certified. But this can open you to things like the ICMA, which is the International Capital Market Association, the Climate Bonds Initiative, GRES, which is used by real estate investors to know the performance of their portfolio, the CDP, the Global Disclosure System for investors, companies, states, cities, and regions, which might be required in the future. And we have also, it's helped a lot of our clients get clients as well. So we have a very large warehousing company that we're working with in Egypt. And what they are working on is they're going to have all EDGE certified, but the clients from, let's say, Scandinavia, if IKEA wants to move in, they're looking for this type of building. So there's many ways to get funding. There's either funding through us if it's large enough, or if it's viable. And some of the examples that I would bring up that we've done is we do a lot of work in Africa. So we have a large program in Africa. We have people in Ghana, Nigeria, and South Africa, and they basically will, the ones in Nigeria and Ghana cover all of Western Africa. And we have representatives in MENA as well for the Building Transformation Program. In Ghana, and somebody, actually one of these might be Maysoon's project, I'm not sure, but the King Hussein Business Park, yeah, that is her project, okay. So these are the type of projects, these get to EDGE advanced. So that's an example in Jordan. In Lebanon, we have the Tomi Rizq office building is also advanced. We have in Kenya, ALP North, which is also warehousing that has gone to advanced. And then in Ghana, we have an airport, which is Terminal Port 3. And all of these, because they have already reached the 40% energy reduction, have a much better chance of being able to get to that goal of being more zero carbon or actually achieving net positive energy. And some of our clients as well are even reinforcing their roofs for the future to be able to have that as, add solar panels, work on this, and get it moved towards that direction. So that's only something we're talking about and encouraging them to do as well. Great,
thank you. I'm so glad to hear there's so much momentum in MDBs and finance for this. So Sandra, finally, I just wanted to ask you about your thoughts. I mean, you've worked in a range of environments, including in some of the places where it's really difficult to turn around construction. What do you think is needed now to galvanize a net positive approach?
Yeah, welcome everyone, and thank you for being patient with me solving some technical problems. Well, from the perspective of living in the Middle East, I believe that first we need to understand what net positive concept means for the region and each country. So the first step would be to identify countries and regional priorities in terms of environmental issues and the environmental impact that buildings and construction sector real estate has, not only on environment, but also on social economical impact that they have. So once we identify those major issues, we can then define the scope of net positive, because we can approach to the scope from different aspects. Let's say we can tackle the problem of water consumption or energy consumption, but still achieving the net positive in water or net positive in carbon or energy might not be trade off for negative impact against some other aspects, let's say, of getting the more jobs in real estate or sustainable funding options, or let's say like human development capital or health and well-being. So we need to approach the problem like fully holistically, and then I believe this is the city mayor of the country government, and then to approach to the problem from this aspect and collect data. So once we see the data, then we can manage the data basically. Then, you know, whatever can be measured can be managed. And then once we can work on the shifting, basically the state of mind of all of us, because we were like, I believe all of us in emergency state, trying to reduce. But now I believe we need, instead of reducing, we need to innovate and then be more positive. So that's hence we have this terminology of net positive. So bringing back more to the environment, bringing back more to the people and economy of the country. And I believe all of us, and then that's why I believe all of these sectors are equally important. From architects and then people in like financial sector and then government, as well as like NGOs have an equal role and in like guiding this net zero revolution in the region.
Great, thanks so much, Sandra. And you know, just I think that issue of trade-offs, that's incredibly important for some countries, and why they've been, you know, where they've had to adapt green building regulations to suit their environments and their needs. So it's a very important consideration for this shift to net positive as well. So we've got some questions, and I'm going to field these to people. One from Tawhid Bashar. Do you think integration, cross-sectoral collaboration and co-creation are a vision for sustainability? What are the actions to reach them? I think that's probably for you, Maysoon, as you touched on the need to integrate through the value chain.
Yeah. Well, actually, what I meant by integration is revolutionize the design process. Okay, so by changing, I have an echo. I don't know. Can we turn off other?
Maybe we'll switch.
Okay. What I mean is like the normal or the traditional method of design now is very linear. It's like a step by step. Each one will deliver to the next person to work on the design. Like the architect will start, and then the services by mechanical, electrical, structural, and then the contractor. So this linear process is not giving us the maximum that we can get from a building. So if you want to design a green building, a sustainable building, high performance buildings, all of these assets that we incorporate into our sustainable buildings, you have to change this way, because an architect, he has his knowledge is very good, and he has as we mentioned, he has to go back to the basics and make sure that he's incorporating climatical design in order to reduce the need for, or the demand for any resources, and how to incorporate local material and smart material in the building. But then he cannot control the systems, and then he may lose some opportunities that he can incorporate into the design. So integration, I mean like having the whole design team working together and setting goals for the performance of the building. So at the end, they will reach the best building they can, with all the expertise and all the knowledge embedded in this building from the very start. And also, this is the integration should include also the contractor, if we can, and also the owner, because he can give decisions on yes or no for any technology. And it involves actually research in the very early start of the project. And the research here is very important, because if you do your homework early, you can reduce the cost of changing anything in the design or the systems later on. Also, it may include even the operation and the maintenance facility manager from the project, if we can get that, and also all the stakeholders. So integration of multiple layers of stakeholders in the design process, so we can get the best value for the money that we are getting and getting the best performed building at the end. That will reduce the need for any mitigation for the carbon that we may need at the end, because it will be much less than if we just go through the normal linear process.
That makes a lot of sense, and there's a big, there's big discussions here in the UK about, how to move to a circular economy and, how to get rid of the waste in the building industry, because we always over order everything and then throw everything away, and that has to be a conversation, that brings in the designer and the contractors and the construction material suppliers. So we have a question for you, Michelle. A couple of questions. Considering the current world economic crisis, financing bodies could bring around tools and resources to trigger and make this revolution happen earlier, says Raji Valaden. He says, but all that needs to be coordinated and properly guided on the field and at the local level. So he's asking you, Michelle, how do you address small to medium-sized projects, which are the bulk of projects across the MENA region?
Okay, so across the MENA region, some of the markets are considered emerging and some are not. So would be kind of a first statement on that. The way that we address small to medium projects is that we will go towards the banks. We will basically incentivize the banks, and then they will offer the loans to the people wishing to do this. Usually, in the case of we're working with a bank called Pro Credit, you will get a benefit for that. So we encourage something like a percentage decrease in your interest rate, and it would encourage you to be able to do the certification process, but not have it cost more. We have a lot of evidence as well that through these loans, you're getting the lower interest rate, but also even if you look at it without a lower interest rate, you're able to see that the cost maybe, let's say it's $300 US more, and because we're dealing with quite an easy system to use, and say you've chosen some of the lower hanging fruit, then in that case you could go to the bank as well, and you might be saving a month in rent. So your monthly payment overall is actually less than your monthly payment would be if you didn't have a green certification. So that's really what the system that we use is focused on, is really reducing that. And then the banks also know what we want to do and how do we make this happen is what we have to do two things. First thing is we have to have customers for the banks. So we want to make sure that we hear from everyone who is on this call, who's an emerging market. I can leave my email on the bottom as well, who is interested in this sort of loan system, and then we can also go to the banks with a group of customers that are interested. If you're a very large developer, in that case, you can come directly to us as well. But it's kind of like this, it's a push and pull with the banking system. If we are, and again, if it's a large developer, we'll go directly to them. That being said, there's also many investments that are happening from countries all over the EU, the UK. So do not just stop at IFC, and we also offer advisory services. So if you are not able to get or be qualified, or a bank in your country is not able to be qualified to take these types of incentives, then we can give you advice on where to go, because there are some international options as well.
That's really interesting, and I see that with other MDBs working through the local banks, because that's the only way to reach these small and medium-sized enterprises. There's another question relating to affordable housing. Is it, and this could be for you, could be for others. Is it possible at the intersection of climate smart and affordable housing, which supports? Is it possible to apply green certification here, I guess, which supports inclusive shifts to net zero and net positive futures? And it's an issue very close to my heart. So I'm interested to hear whether the finance is out there, and whether the possibility is out there. Maybe Maysoon wants to come in actually.
Can I bring up one example first? Yes. So in South Africa, we had an investment with a company called Baldwin Properties. And for them, it was 15,000 units of affordable housing that were built to our sustainability standards, with almost zero incremental cost. And to be net positive or zero carbon could be done if they decided to take this further. So it was, and when I'm talking almost zero incremental cost, it could be like a 1-year payback period to a 3-year payback period. But these guys down in South Africa have got it so optimized, they're doing it almost like very, very low incremental cost on this. And I think that we need to focus on these type of projects instead of just superstar projects that are reaching the net positive energy or are going to be able to reach zero carbon, because by just focusing on that, it seems unobtainable. And that's what we're really trying to do here at IFC. So Maysoon, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, I would just say that on smaller scale, in Jordan, we don't have that larger of scale of units, like 1,500 units in one project. So we usually work on a smaller size. But even for a smaller size, it's feasible. We have multiple projects who are like will be certified soon by several rating systems. But yeah, it's affordable and it's feasible even for smaller size projects. Maybe as Michelle said, when you are working on a larger scale, you can work directly with the developer as an entity, as an IFC, but when you are working on smaller scale, it will be private, like budgeting, or that will be the support from the developer himself or the owner of the house or the building himself. But it's feasible.
And I think definitely from our experience with Jordan Green Building Council, it was so important to hear from the local communities as well what they needed. I think playing to Sandra's point about the priorities for that community. There's a couple of questions around, whether net positive constructions are feasible in the Middle East and North Africa region. At what stage are we at? Raji might like to answer that. And then, more specifically for Sandra, are there any net positive projects in Africa, and how can you categorize the projects in the African and other continents? So maybe start with you, Raji, and then to Sandra.
Sure. Actually, the first experience we had with moving into net positive buildings or net zero buildings was certifying our warehouses as LEED certified buildings. And the cost per warehouse was between 6 to 10% of the total cost of the building, which is a bit higher if you compare it to the benefits that you might get if you just go into an energy efficiency process and don't need to go further into the full registration of, full certification of a LEED, especially if it's a 60,000 to 100,000 square meters warehouse. So cost is still a bit high here in the region. For example, LEED, I'm not too involved in it, but in LEED, the regulations the USGBC has put for buildings to be certified is meant for maybe US and not this part of the world. In some countries in this part of the world, you import sand from outside because the sand you have in the country is not good for building. So you lose lots of points, and then you have to compensate with sometimes points that do not make sense, like having bicycles in Dubai. To get 5 points or 3 points on that, and nobody would be using them during summer there, but you'll have the rack there and you get your 5 points. So maybe in the certification part, some amendments need to be done in this part of the world to fit the environment, to fit regulations in this part.
Thanks, Raji.
I just want to tell Raji that the bicycle now has more restrictions, so you cannot get that easy point anymore. It's developing well now.
Yeah, I know, but there are lots of points in the LEED that you can work around them, and they do not make sense for this part of the world.
You come what you want from your project.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
It comes back to the needs and the needs of the users of the building.
Yeah.
Sandra, any projects in Africa that really exhibit this net positive approach?
Yeah, glad I'm at the moment in Kuwait, so I can say about this region. So in Kuwait, we like the revolution about green buildings, net zero, net positive starts usually from residential buildings or private initiatives of developers and clients. So at the moment we are working and supporting one project to test the ground for net zero and net positive houses, because they're taking the major role in the construction sector in Kuwait and I believe in the Middle East. But like in Kuwait and some other countries in the region, it's really difficult to justify the cost of the net positive and net zero buildings when you're having like highly subsidized energy and water. And then there is no justification for capex investment in net zero or net positive buildings. So here we are coming to the concept that needs to be highly supported by the government as a building the vision at a higher level, and then that they will bring a lot of like policies and regulations that they will guide and transform the sector into this direction. On another level, this will be then be supported by the financial institutions and different ways of green bonds and green mortgages and green financing to support this concept. But there are initiatives and there are changes being happening. And we believe the revolution will happen soon.
Thank you. Now I know we have to. We're coming to the end of our session, which is a shame. Have we got a chance to ask each panelist for one sum up comment, or have we? Okay. So we could really go on for a much longer period on this, but I just want to turn to each of you. Maybe we will start with you, Maysoon. Just a very short, succinct point on what would be your take-home message for the participants today?
Actually, it will be invest in the future of the next generation of architects. Let them work from now, embed these sustainability concepts as they start working from the beginning of their profession, and we will have a much better future.
Thank you so much, Maysoon. Raji?
Well, I talked to the fellow private sector companies. It's not luxury anymore to say I'm going to be green. It's a necessity, and if we don't do it now, it will be imposed on you very soon. So move fast to reach them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Strong message there, Michelle.
Okay, I guess I would just say that kind of in our collaborative movement towards this net positive energy and zero carbon buildings, we must not forget that the emerging market is really an extremely important place to look at, and that it's going to be the place that's going to most greatly impact our world. And so I think that we have to keep this in mind when we are working with standards and investment and all the, where we're looking to put not just the superstar buildings, as I said before.
Yeah, good advice. Sandra?
Yeah, I would just say, like, because the real estate and buildings are really highly responsible for the huge chunk of emission and then water consumption and waste generations, I think there is a space for huge improvement, not only reduction, but innovation. So this is my call for all professionals that cover the full life cycle of the building, from design, construction, development, material sector, financial sector, to come up with the innovations to drive full transformation of the construction sector and move towards net positive concept.
Thank you so much. I just want to thank you all really and the participants for being involved in such a forward-looking discussion. It was fascinating for me. I think this is still a radical concept, but it's necessary and it's essential that we work on it. I've seen some people have shared links in the chat, which is great, to actual examples. So I want to thank everyone and wish you a very successful Congress, and hand back to Dominica.
Thank you so much, Glada, and thank you to the panelists for your insights. I think it was a really great discussion, and yeah, you can see the engagement in the chat. It was really encouraging to hear that there is an understanding of net positive and its importance as a target, and that we have to work towards it in the region, even if it's not, even if there's still a little bit of a ways to go before we start to meet this target on scale. So thank you all. I would now like to invite everybody to our next session, which is called The Power of Data, Accelerating to Net Zero, where you will hear from Siemens about how to use data to reach our net zero targets. So please, again, just click on the sessions icon to the left of the screen and then select the Power of Data session, and I will see you there very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.